Hi, good morning, everybody. It's so great to see you back one more time in our series today. We have a great guest today. I'm very excited about this live. We want to keep doing what we're doing, which is like supporting families everywhere to empower themselves, empower their children to grow. And I always welcome you back with something from my garden or something from my house. So I want to welcome you with two of the mangoes that I had pick up this morning. I wish everybody was able to come and share some mangoes with us. But I want to give a little introduction about our guest today. Her name is Cami, and she is from Bilingual Brown Babies, and she is here. Let me in.
¡Hola!
Hola, Cami. Bienvenida, mamá Tortuga.
Gracias.
So for everyone who are not familiar with Cami, she is totally like a one of my sisters. I haven't met her in person, but everything I read about her and her mission and her passion and everything is totally aligned with what we do here in Mama Tortuga. So I needed to have her here in our series. So I want to tell everybody that she's just coming back to her house. She went to an amazing trip to tell us where.
I was in Guatemala for a week. I took a family down to Guatemala with my son, and we hosted them and we showed them around Guatemala City and of course Antigua. And we were there for a whole week, and we had an amazing time. We got a lot of steps in too.
Wow. And I saw some of the pictures and everything looks so good.
I know it has been a minute. It's been a couple of years since I've been to Guatemala, so I was kind of seeing it with fresh eyes, but then still remembering places. So by the time we got to Antigua, I was like, "Oh, I have to take you to this restaurant. Oh, I have to take you to this restaurant. Oh, let me take you over here to this store."
Of course, because that's what it's all about. When you go to these amazing experiences and you have the amazing privilege of being able to travel, the good thing is like going and really seeing the culture and meet the real people, not just going to the touristy places, but have some time to reflect in the real culture. And that's one of the reasons languages are so amazing, isn't it?
Yes, and it was great to actually sit back and watch my son use Spanish while we were down there and having him ordering his breakfast and asking questions and exchanging money with the hotel concierge all in Spanish.
Ah.
It's amazing to sit back and watch him do that because he's never been to Guatemala before. This is his first time.
Wow, that's awesome. And what an amazing confidence step, like I really believe like when children see themselves, like being able to say things in another language, like in a fluent manner, is so good for their confidence of it all. But
yes,
in
by
so
Sunday he
many,
was playing soccer with little boys. The
oh,
little boy
that's
said, "Oh,
awesome.
no lo entiendo, no lo entiendo." And he was like, "No, no, entiendo, entiendo."
Ah! That's amazing. And like that's one thing that I always tell parents. Many times we tell children, well, learn languages because later on you're gonna get a job, or later on, like you're gonna have more money, or all these ideas that for children just go like whip. But when you tell them like, hey, like languages will make you go comfortable and go places and make new friends and don't be shy because you don't know what they're talking about, or feeling bad because you don't know what they're talking about. But it's so amazing to see that they can grow in their like skills.
Yes, it was amazing to sit back and kind of watch him kind of take the lead and try to do these things with language. And it was like a good mommy pat on the back, but then also realizing just how important as a parent, it is to model language, which is one of the things that I like to focus on. Like, I like to tell people, like, you can put your child in a Spanish class all you want, but if they come home and they don't see you speaking it, they're gonna lose it because they
Definitely,
need to practice with
definitely.
somebody. Or they're going to, if they're of that age where they might be younger, they're going to realize that, oh, I only do Spanish at school and I don't do it anywhere else. And being able to really see, like, okay, good job, mama, because you made sure that he got that Spanish at home. So he had the
Yeah.
confidence, he knows enough to use it in other places, as opposed to being nervous and timid and scared about going up to people. He asked questions. I don't know how to say this. Mommy, how do I say this? And I tell him, and he's like, oh, okay. He was bargaining by the end of the week. And
That's awesome. And so, can you share with us like a little bit of your road into languages, like the road of your family?
Yes. Okay. So I am originally from Wisconsin. And when my mom had me when she was still in college. So when she went back to school, I was about 4 years old, and she still had to do her foreign language requirement. So I'd come home with her Spanish flashcards, and she would go over the alphabet and numbers and this, that, and the other with me when I was as young as 4. And then when I got to middle school, I was required to choose a language. You know, like, you can have your choices, either Spanish or French, which one do you want? And I was like, Spanish?
My dad?
So they signed me up for Spanish, and I took Spanish, and from 6th grade on, all the way through high school. And then I got to college, and it was actually my minor, because I thought I was going to be an OBGYN. And then my first biology test said, I don't know if this is really your field.
Wow,
So
sure.
I ended up switching to my major to Spanish, but I already had the classes because of the minor. And it was phenomenal because I started getting all these different opportunities. So I got to study abroad. I did study abroad in Oaxaca. Then
Nice.
I was working for the International Affairs Center on campus, and I was meeting all of these diplomats that had been stationed in a lot of Latin American countries. And then my first job out of college, I was working for Palace Resorts out of Cancun. So
Wow, but what a great opportunity.
So I was based in Georgia, but we had to go back and forth to Cancun to do like familiar trips for travel agents and things like that. So I spent a lot of time and using my Spanish in order to be able to communicate with them. And then I decided I wanted to go back to school. I was like, I want to go back. I want to get another degree. So I ended up going to American for my master's. And when I was there, I was going for international communication. I was looking and said, I really don't want to take these policy courses. Can I But
Don't worry. I was like, oh my God, don't tell me I lost her.
yeah, no, like a call coming in. But I didn't want to take the policy courses. Like, I wasn't really interested in being on Capitol Hill trying to promote like those types of things in regards to international communication. I was like, I really want to interact with people. And then I found out that you can get certified bilingual if you took graduate level courses and got at least a B or better. So you had to take 3 graduate level courses that were taught exclusively in Spanish, get at least a B or better in the class. They would give you a certificate saying that you were certified bilingual. So I did that, and I passed the courses. I got A's on the courses, so I got my little certificate. But then I decided I wanted to change my major around. I said, I want to do something different. I want to do something that has more human interaction. It's still the international focus, but I just really want to do something more with people. So I added anthropology. And when I did that,
I'm telling you, we're connected somehow.
so I added anthropology. So my master's is really, really long, but my master's is in international affairs, interdisciplinary studies, international communication, and anthropology.
Nice. I love it. But then from there, did you end up getting a partner from a Latin American country, or how is this?
I started working for Relief and Development. I started working for Catholic Relief Services, you know, the Relief and Development Agency for the bishops here in the U.S. I started working for them, but my entire domain was Latin America. So I was in charge of media relations for all of our Latin America programming.
Wow.
I was going to Colombia on a regular basis. I was in Guatemala. I was in Nicaragua and the Dominican Republic. I was going to all these different places in order to be able to address. I had to go to El Salvador for a month in 2001 because they had a really bad earthquake that had the landslide.
Yes.
I had to go down there right after that because our program director was saying some things on camera that weren't quite appropriate. So I had to go down and create a press
trying to mitigate, of course, all these women of color trying to mitigate the situation.
Right. So I had to come down, create a press strategy, and basically train him. Like, this is what you can say, this is what you can't say. Don't do this. Take the. Yes. So I had to be there for a month. Yeah. In order for that to be able to happen. And then I decided I wanted to go in the classroom. And for all this time, I had been avoiding the classroom. Like, I don't want to be a Spanish teacher. Nah, I don't want to do it. I've been avoiding it like the plague. And then finally, I decided, okay, I'm going to go into the classroom. And I went to teach. I did a career changers program where they gave me certification so long as I was in a Title I school for at least 2 years. Yeah. So I went to that school. And I was replacing someone who actually who couldn't get their credentials. They kept failing the certification test for teaching. So I was replacing him. And his main comment to me was, they just need to know how to say hola and cómo estás, because they really don't know nothing about language here anyway.
Oh my gosh.
Majority Black children at this school. So I said, okay. And I get there and I had my first class with them, and I'm realizing that no, they actually can get this. So I started teaching it the way I thought this is what you need to learn. I'm bringing in my experiences from Catholic Relief Services, showing them pictures of all the different places.
Showing them the real thing, the real culture.
And talking to them about what my experience was. Like my first time ever encountering Afro-Colombians is when I was talking over programming about the desplazados, right?
Yeah, so, a lot of people don't know about them, and they're huge.
Yes, huge.
Whole Latin America.
Full of Black people in Bogotá.
Yes, it's the diaspora. What are you talking about?
Right. And we both had the same look on our face, because I think they were a little tired of not seeing people that look like them coming in to solve their problem. So when I walked in as one of the representatives for the bishops, they're like, oh, thank God.
Yes, of course, because it's so important talking about representation, talking about role models for the new generations. If they don't see themselves in those role models, or if they only see themselves in role models that are totally out of place, like, I see a lot of, like celebrities that are acting like wackos, and they think, oh, I want to be like that. I'm like, like, don't you know you can, be so much more? But that's why we need to amplify these voices. That's why we need to form these bridges, these networks. I'm so into these, especially now more than ever, because I believe that it's the only way we have to get out of this madness. This is madness. And a lot of people that, already follow Mama Tortuga know how I'm feeling about certain things. And I try to kind of keep it very positive, because I believe, like, we are so wonderful and we can do it. But at the same time, I believe, like, we need to break stereotypes. Yes, we need to talk anti-racism and anti-oppression very actively. And we need to form communities of network, especially, I cannot emphasize it even more now than ever. Like, all melanated people need to understand that in order for us to really be empowered, we need to work together.
Yes.
We cannot keep working against each other and just giving on a blind eye, because this is really what is giving other groups that want us destroyed. Yeah, seriously.
Really what it is.
Giving us the advantage. And that's what they work on actively. All this propaganda, all this kind of hate speech that is masked as freedom of speech, is towards a lot of, like, creating anti people sentiment and trying to make our children believe like they're not worth it, that they cannot do it, that they don't work hard enough. And we are here to say, like, that is a lie.
Right. And that's why
many of us that are working towards doing so much more. It's just that our voices are not being amplified. So nobody's asking us to come and, and do it.
but we are here and doing it. You know, because we saw the
And we're not
need.
going anywhere.
And we saw the need, and actually that's why I want to communicate. You know, we may not have a lot of audience, but all this video right now is going to be recorded and hopefully put it in my website as well as my IGTV. And I want to tell everybody that Cami has an amazing program. She is getting a homeschooling bilingual curriculum for children of color, especially Black communities.
Yeah, so I just finished developing a curriculum that teaches Spanish, but then also teaches Afro-Latino culture at the same time. It
Nice.
uses the history. So it focuses on like 6 countries: Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Honduras, Cuba, and Mexico. And it talks about the black populations in those countries and the history of how they got there and all of that stuff. And then I weave the language lessons around those populations. So there's like Afro-Latino artists that I include in the curriculum.
Nice.
There's poems. There's an Afro-Peruvian poet that I love who has this poem that reminds me of Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou.
Yes,
How
yes.
proud she is about her Blackness and who she is.
Yes.
So
yes. I think I've seen that poem in a video, this girl saying it, and it's so powerful. And I always tell people, you know, like when you speak many languages and when you're bilingual and you're fluent in many languages, you have such an advantage in your literature as well, because you can read books in the original language. And there's so many delightful books and poems in Spanish that, you know, when you read the translation, it cannot capture the same feeling, it cannot capture the same strength. When you're reading it, it's the same, you know, in any language. And so that's one of the things that I love about being able to read and speak many languages.
Right. You can't just translate Nicolas Guillen because he purposefully wrote it in Spanish to fit a particular rhythm. So once you translate it, then the whole rhythm is gone.
Exactly.
And his whole style is gone.
Exactly. Well, I need to tell you, I'm very passionate about this. I've been trying for the past few years to create better relationships, especially with Black women in my community. Many times it's very difficult. I have to admit, it's also a lot of cultural and community differences. And I think, you know, many times we're failing in creating common spaces where we can kind of like, you know, come together as women and relate in so many issues, and at the same time talk about issues that are hard for all of us. But why I you know, I want to address those issues is because I believe like the only way for us as mothers to raise next generations that are not going to have those separations or that kind of mentality is if we are doing the job as parents, if we are owning it, if we are acknowledging our internalized colonization, internalized racism, and working actively in it. And I know it's a painful job. I know like many times people don't even want to address it. And that's okay. I feel like, you know, it's totally okay. But once you're ready for that job, and once you really understand that this is needed in order for our children to don't keep doing what was happening right now, you know, I think it becomes this passion. And for me, it's like right now, I more than ever, I feel like it's so sick to see that a lot of the bilingual education is mostly geared toward white people.
It is. And that's one of
a lot of the websites, you know, like it's always like, oh, you know, like you need to do, and I'm like always like asking myself, well, but a lot of Latino kids are bilingual. I'm multilingual. Like I live in a place where we have a lot of Guatemala Maya community. These kids, a lot of them speak 4 languages.
Right. Because when you
and that is being amplified in a way. Actually, it's on the contrary. Many times in their schools, they're treated like, oh, poor kids, they don't speak English, or their parents don't speak English. And maybe they're not as intelligent as their white peers because they're usually not in the gifted programs, or, you know, all this kind of mumble jumble that is such a double standard
Yeah.
And that applies also for Black children. I've seen so many of them, that, the administrators many times pack them so many things and put them labels and tell them, oh, it's because they have misbehavior, they have this or that. And in reality,
Right.
isn't even anything of that. They're very brilliant. They are capable of being bilingual. They're capable of being in a dual language program. But many times, because yes, there are issues, because we are living in a society where we need a lot of mental and psychological support that
Mm-hmm.
are not being addressed. Of course, children are in another, area. So I'm really happy to see parents like you, and you're not the only one, by the way, Cami.
I
I have
know. I'm
a lot of
excited.
friends here locally that they decided to put their children in a dual language school in all their elementary school years, even though they didn't speak any Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
because they saw the importance of their children being bilingual or being exposed to Spanish, realizing that Spanish, by the way, is the second language of the United States.
Yeah, it is. It's what I think it's the third most popular language in the world.
Yeah,
So all of these things, like, people don't even think about. But one of the things that you were saying that was really interesting, and I want to go back to,
yeah,
is, because all four of my children, I raised all four of my children bilingual, so they all speak English.
awesome.
So when I'm filling out school applications, well, what language is spoken at home, and when I put that they speak English and Spanish at home, it's an automatic red flag. They want to remediate my kids because I said that they speak Spanish at home.
Yes,
No, let's be clear. My children don't need remediation. My 10-year-old reads at a 7th grade level. It's fine. He's good. He doesn't need
yes.
remediation. Well,
Well,
and
they
they
put the
I was
kids.
actually told by the administrators, well, anytime we see that that a family speaks Spanish at home, it's automatic that they have to get remediated. I said that's racist.
Well, that happened to me, Tammy. Like, my kids were in ESOL program.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were born here. And of
Right.
course, we only speak Spanish at home because I wanted them to be bilingual.
Right.
But I think their language is completely fine. But they still were put in ESOL programs. And
Mm-hmm.
when I asked, and ESOL means, like they needed help in
Right.
their English skills. They needed help. When I went and asked them, they're like, well, it's because you put that you speak Spanish at home.
Yeah, I wrote on there. I wrote I deny remediation for my children, and I signed it, and I said this is gonna have to go on their application every year. I said if I have to sign this every year, because which you're not going to put my child into this bubble and assume that just because they speak multiple languages at home, that means that they're not able to function. So I'm gonna deny this right every year, and you're just either going to change the rule or you're just going to have to deal with me denying the right for them to get remediation every year.
Yes.
Well, if you deny that, then that can be an issue. I said, well, we'll take up that issue with their report cards and talk to me about that.
Well, and
Then
there's so many other
uncle.
issues, Cami. Like, I remember the time where I went to administration and they were explaining to me that they have different measurings for Hispanic children. I hate that word, by the way. I don't like to use Hispanic, but that's the term they use.
Right.
And Black children, like, they don't expect the same levels in reading. And when they were showing me that, like, I was feeling so outraged, because I was like, oh, so you're telling me that you don't
You
expect my
assuming.
children to read as well as their counterparts when all of them are in the same classroom?
Mm-hmm.
It's a madness, and the whole system is still based in discrimination, and
Right.
a lot of people till this day don't acknowledge it. But yes, check your local school district. I'm pretty sure they can explain it to you till this day.
Mm-hmm.
I was even hearing a podcast the other day that saying that there were some IQ tests that they cannot give to Black children, neither Latinos, because I
Mm-hmm.
those IQ tests are only supposed to be for white children. Are
Mm-hmm.
you kidding me?
My son took the gifted and talented test this year. He tested for gifted and talented. He passed everything with flying colors except for creativity because he's a linear thinker, and they denied him access to tag. They said, oh, he didn't make it, he failed because he
Yeah,
missed
and on the other
everything
side,
else. He was in the 98th percentile for everything else, but because he didn't pass the creativity, they're like, oh yeah, no, he can't.
no, on the other side, Cami, let me tell you what happened to us with my daughter. She was in a dual language, and the school decided to open like a gifted dual language classroom. So I was delighted. I was like, okay, like test her. I wasn't even interested to get her out of the dual language. So I say, okay, go ahead, do the test. She passed the test. And I remember some parents trying to kind of like telling me that she passed the test because her test was easier, because they do an easier test for Latinos, for gifted. And I was like, are you serious? Oh, yes, they have a different test for Latinos and Black children for IQs. And I was like, yeah, like lo and behold, I go and ask, and they're like, well, it's just that there's not as many kids in gifted programs of, those populations that many times it is like tweak or something like that. But
You
of
change
course,
that for everybody, not just make it easier. I mean, that's the whole institutional
that's
racism
an
is
excuse they use
education.
to like later on say, oh yeah, they're not as smart. And that's why actually I have this conversation with especially black women that tell me like, oh, I'm happy that they get away with their affirmative action. And I'm like, how can you even say that? Like that's and they're like, because I've been accused of being in the school, or I've been accused personally of having access to programs that I'm not ready for, just because they have an affirmative action. And I think that's so ridiculous, because that's a bogus argument. Whoever qualifies for any program in anywhere is because they have the requirements. Otherwise, they wouldn't even let them apply to the program, first of all. And second of all, we already have proof that a lot of these programs, people buy their way in. Like, haven't you seen the news? People pay. Why people pay for getting their kids in those programs? And those kids weren't ready for those programs. So in a fair world, that argument will work. We say, oh yes, whoever is ready for it, like, will get the spot. But that is a lie, because it's not the way it's been working. It's not the way it works. There's no way children of color are less intelligent than their counterparts, because that doesn't have anything to do with your skin color or your culture. You are who you are, period. Exactly. So when they use that in the argument, that's epigenetics, that's racist, and they're just quoting studies that were developed from Nazis, and that bothers me to the core, and I cannot believe it, like, listening to these arguments even from people of color. I have to kind of like argue all the time, like, why are you saying that? I was like, no. Go back, do your research, because that is and sadly, that's what we see a lot in education otherwise. So I believe.
And education is one of those places where people assume there is no racism, but the institution is so deep there, because that's how we were able to shape and mold the folks that are doing the stuff that they're doing. They all came through the same education system. And there are so many institutionalized problems in education that folks just don't pay any attention to. Like this whole idea, especially when it comes to like children of color in language, like this whole assumption that, oh, well, they can't get it because they know, but the way that we use language is so far more complex than the standardized English that just is beyond understanding. We have so many the African systems of language that we've kind of as a part of our genetic memory changes up how we're even able to process things. And that's why most slang and most these idiomatic expressions that folks like to use came from people of color, because we have the creativity and the talent to be able to manipulate languages, because we've always been doing it. We've always been doing it. And folks don't, and people see that, and they see that skill, and they want that skill. They don't know how to teach that skill, so they suppress it in us instead. And
Yeah.
then there you go. So let's just say that that's a bad thing that they do that. If we tell them that it's bad that they do that, then they'll just do things like us, and then we don't have to worry about the creativity, which is really what we get when it comes, especially when it comes to language learning. You're making
Yeah.
these oppressive assumptions about our children when it comes to language, and my house, your house is a proof that that's not the case. Like, you cannot say that our children are lacking anything in language
No,
as they speak
no.
to, because I can pull out report cards from pre-K all the way up to now for all of my children. I will beg to differ. I will beg to differ that they've
But
been
I
this
believe
whole
it's so
time.
important. I mean, I believe it's so important to acknowledge that what a child needs to learn is support and and acknowledgement of trauma. You know, like a lot of children are not learning, period, is because they have situations that are going on in their house, or, you know, in their communities, that are traumatic. Like, let's talk about, you know, like a lot of the children right now, like from Latinos communities, that we have to deal with this amount of hate that, oh yes, we're going to send ICE to deport all of you. Okay, wait a minute here. What? How come do you think a child can go to school and maybe not even be sure that they're going to find their mom or dad on the way back from school? And I've seen that happening, you know. And the same goes for children, Black communities that are kind of like, you know, like plagued with a lot of issues, like, you know, from lack of, you know, good source
Food.
of food,
Food. We have food apartheid in a lot of our
health
communities.
care. Many of them are living in places that are not even appropriate for living, you know, because everything is going up the roof, and parents are working 2-3 jobs in order to pay the rent and pay bills. And then people are telling me like, oh no, they're not as smart. And I'm like, no, these kids are adjusting. These kids
Right.
are trying their best. Like, I wouldn't be able to study if I'm under so much pressure. If I know, like, I'm going through like this period of my life that I have to deal with so many other issues, like thinking if I'm gonna have something to eat, or if I'm gonna be able to see my mom and dad. So the trauma is real. The lack of acknowledgement from our governments, and I'm saying governments here because people say like, I won't peg this to one government. I acknowledge that this is a deep rooted problem.
Yeah.
The thing that a lot of our communities also believe the lies of colonization, and
Yeah.
and you know, in thinking like we're not smart enough, we shouldn't aim higher than this, because I've been hearing people telling others that,
And
you
that and
know,
that
like,
and that's that deep rooted oppressive socialization, right? That socially, I marvel all the time because I'll sit back and I'll listen, and it's not it there's a sadness, but there's also like this, man, they really did a good job on us to allow us to be able to, because I mean, I'm not saying that this is, I'm in the general sense, because there are pockets of us that are like, look, I'm not falling for the garbage.
yes, yes, no, yeah.
But if you look at our communities as a whole, there are so many of us that will repeat the language that we've been told and taught because we don't know anything else. And being able to understand that that's not us, that's not us having low self-esteem. That's the way that you have programmed us to believe. Like, there are legitimately folks, there are legitimately people in the Black community right now who think that it is absolutely unnecessary for them to travel anywhere but beyond their block.
Well,
And
I cannot even go
why do I
beyond. There
keep
were
going?
Black people and Latinos who voted for Trump. And when
Right.
I asked them, like, what
But
do you think? Why did you do it? And they're like, oh, because of the economy. And I'm like, but don't you realize, you know, that there are way more important issues right now than just base everything in the economy, which is, by the way, not even a truth, but, you know, like, of course, it's a common brainwash. And sadly, you're right about this. You are so right, because I see it every day. And it's like a lack of solidarity, a
right.
lack of showing up for each other.
and it's not everybody, because there are those of us that are like, no, this is wrong. This is not how things should work. We should be able to do things differently. So I don't want to say that this is everybody,
No,
but
no, no.
I do. But it is important for us to be able to acknowledge that for those of us that are doing the work, in those moments of frustration, it's not the people, it's the socialization. So you can't get frustrated with the people for saying and thinking the things that they're saying. This is just more evidence for you that this is why it is a problem. Because it's more evidence for you to be able to see, okay, this is why we need to fix this. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm doing the work. I have absolutely no problem with telling families, no, I only work with families of color. Because I understand. You can go to Pimsleur. You can go get you a little copy of Rosetta Stone if you want to do that.
Yeah, you have so many things for you.
What the children in my community need is to be able to see a representation of themselves in language in order for them to get it. And it would be a benefit. Yes, you do need to read it. Let me point you to some books, but I'm not going to be the one to teach you, because I've got work to do over here in my own community. And I want to do stuff for my own community to make sure that they get what they're supposed to get, because I am at an advantage. I do have a PhD. I do have entrance into things that a lot of folks in my community don't necessarily have access to, but I can bring it to them.
Yes, and you're using that privilege to bring it to your community, which I think is so amazing. And that's why I wanted to have this IG Live with you. This is a series that I've been doing called Mama Tortuga Community Friends, and all of them are doing something to help their communities, to empower their children, to empower themselves, to raise next generation that is going to raise up to the level and seeing themselves as global citizens of this world, and start changing these paradigms that are not helping us, not serving us as humanity, because we do have so many other very, very important issues right now, like the environment and like the food security, like so much. And no, we're picking on all stuff that we shouldn't be even be picking. And the funny thing is, like a lot of us, like, we're totally the resistance. I call myself the resistance, because I believe there's hope. Like, a lot of people are still saying, like, well, but oh my gosh, everything is lost. No, every time I see children that are speaking different languages and helping their friends and being smart and questioning and, not just following blindly, that's hope for me. And that makes me believe that as parents, as educators, we can bring light to these areas, and we can keep talking about them, not for the sake of bringing the criticism or sensationalism. That's plenty out there, but to heal it, to bring these conversations to help each other and to form common bonds. Like right now, like I say, a lot of my guests I haven't met in person, but I have connections with you. I have connections with all of them, because I believe, like, we are trying our best to bring the stuff that we know parents can use to make their homes and their lives better. And I want to let everybody know that all the links for Bilingual Brown Babies, her book, she has a book on Amazon right now. It's in my website. In the link, if you go to my profile, you'll find it there. And also her Facebook, her Instagram, and her website.
Yes, and all of my links I have a link tree on my IG bio too, so you can see all of the stuff that's there. But so you can absolutely reach out to me. I love connecting with people. So if you send me a message and say, hey, can we just hop on the phone? Absolutely. We can absolutely get on the phone and talk and see what it is that you want to know about language, where you want to start. I can start you off for free or for fee. It's entirely up to you.
And that's about solidarity and love. So no excuses, my sweet friends. If you are homeschooling, if you have a group, and you're Black and you want your children to be bilingual, hit my friend Cami, because she's gonna fix you. And plus, who better? Like, you're the perfect person who can really encourage. And thank you so much.
every day. I know exactly the problems that you're going to run into and when you're going to run into them because my kids are still doing it.
Well, I struggle with it, and you know, I am a Spanish speaker, and both of my children have a different level of Spanish. And when my boy is lazier than my daughter, so sometimes it's like just wants to speak Spanglish, and I'm like, well, you know, that's not actually a language, but I have to kind of like, you know, let it slide sometimes, and kind of like, okay, and keep correcting the verbs, which are fun because he just wants to use the preteritum. Like he just wants to use the verb form for everything. And I'm like, no, you have to conjugate. And
I finally had to give my oldest a verb book. I was like, listen, I need to eat. I need some help. Let
me give you a tip. You know what I've been doing, and I think it's working. Every time he says like the wrong conjugation, I just go and do the whole conjugation for that verb.
Yeah.
So, like for example, when he said yo ver, and I'm like, oh, yo veo, tú ves, él ve, ella ve, ellos ven, and I go through the whole thing, and he looks at me like, oh my gosh, and I'm like, yes, you need the whole conjugation, and then it's good for me too because it kind of reminds me. I always like to do the vosotros. Vosotros days, and they look at me like, ooh, what kind of a language? And I'm like, and I know like that form is not very well used in many countries, but it's still very strong in many countries. So we have to learn it. Yes, but it's so good to talk to you, Cami. Is there any other message you want to leave our viewers with?
There's one thing that I do want to, because I heard you say it when you were talking, and I think it's really important that folks understand that, you know, and when it comes to empowering our children, language is an empowerment tool. And to be able to use language in multiple ways, you're strengthening their power. So being able to have them have a strong command of multiple languages is going to empower them in more ways than one. And it also really does do a lot for our identity in terms of how we're able to see ourselves. To be able to communicate who we are as a person in multiple languages actually solidifies our identity. It doesn't take away from it. So just remembering that language is an empowerment tool, and what you're giving your kids is an empowering tool.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Carmen. You are right. And, you know, there's so many other topics we could be talking about. And hopefully, you know, we'll have another IG Live. It's just that if I make it too long, it's so hard to upload later on. But I would love to talk to you about identity as well. I believe like there are a lot of Afro-Latinos that have such a hard time identifying themselves with Blacks, or even with their own communities, and a lot of children, biracial children living here in the United States, are losing their identity, and language can be a crucial key for that. So thank you so much for everything you do. I'm so glad you agree in having this, and I hope we can be in touch. Please keep me in your network, and I'm so happy that we can be in the same community.
Oh, absolutely. And I can't wait for us to talk again.
Okay. Thank you so much, friends. And remember, all this IG Live and all the questions and the links are on my profile. And you can find everything that Bilingual Babies, Brown Babies do. Bye.
Bye.